the very end. So yeah, I'm going to talk about irrigation scheduling and why irrigation is beneficial, and then maybe at the end, if I have time, talk about the project we did looking at irrigated corn. So why would you want to irrigate your corn? Well, first of all, how many people here actually have corn that they irrigate? A few of you, that's good. So the people that have irrigated corn, they probably know the benefit of it is. First of all, corn is a high water user. As I mentioned before, in Saskatchewan, we find that it can use up to 13.5 inches of water. So in a year like 2018, when you want to get a couple or 3 or 4 inches of water if you're lucky, there's a lot of wasted potential there because of the water stress. So irrigating provides that insurance against drought, and there's also other benefits too. So as Gina mentioned in her talk, germinating and good emergence is extremely important for corn. So with irrigation, you're able to moisten up that soil before seeding, and it's generally recommended that you seed into soils with 60% available moisture. And I'll go into more of what that means later. But when you have irrigation, you're able to get the soil at that moisture level. The only thing is, you also want to seed into warm soils, and with irrigation, you're going to be cooling down that soil right before seeding. So in an ideal situation, you would irrigate a couple of days before seeding. Hopefully there's some sunny days before seeding that heat up the soil, and then you can seed into that moist, warm soil, which would provide you the best bet for your corn emergence. Also, crusting can be an issue too, which also prevents your corn emergence. So a strategy that you can use with irrigation is to apply light irrigations that are frequent. This will help prevent the soil from crusting and allow your corn to emerge better. So those are some of the reasons why you'd want to irrigate your corn crop. So why are we talking about growing corn in the Outlook area? So this is a corn heat unit map that was made from data, I think from 1995 to 2014. And as you can see in this area here, that's where Lake Heatmaker is. We have kind of a hot spot. So the average from this data shows that we get almost 2,400 corn heat units a year, and the data also shows that 9 out of 10 years you're going to be getting at least 2,140 corn heat units. So you probably saw a lot of the information on what the corn heat unit requirements were for some of these new varieties, and most of them are a good fit for the Outlook area because of this kind of hotspot that we're in. So I'm going to be talking about scheduling irrigation. So how many irrigators here, they regularly schedule irrigation? They go out and check the soil and figure out when they need more water. You do? That's good. So those of you that don't, how do you know when to irrigate? It's just kind of look at your neighbor, or you do it based on rainfall, or just do what you always do? Yeah, so there's a survey done in a while, and that's the case for a lot of irrigators in Saskatchewan, is they don't actually go out and schedule irrigation. So I'm going to try to convince you the benefits of scheduling irrigation and how it can benefit you economically as well. So properly scheduling irrigation allows you to make sure that your crop is getting the water when it needs it. And this will help maximize crop production and quality. And also make sure that you use your expensive equipment efficiently, and also applying water to a crop costs money, and that cost seems to be going up. So you want to make sure that you're not applying water when you shouldn't be and wasting that water. So yeah, irrigation scheduling main goal is to prevent drought stress. And this will make sure that you don't have water stress, especially during reproductive stages, which will reduce your yield by a lot. It prevents premature ripening, and it prevents a reduction in stem numbers and stand vigors. That goes back to plant emergence. But you also don't want to make sure you're not over irrigating. So you don't want to be putting on irrigation after 1 inch rain. Too much water will restrict root growth, promote crop disease, and can induce lodging. And there's diseases that affect corn. Corn is a host of Fusarium, as most of you know. I think it's a different strain than what we get in Durham, but it still is a host of Fusarium. And there's also bacteria infection too, like Gauss's growth, that can affect corn. And there's also environmental issues and economic issues of applying too much water. So probably remember a few years back when you got all that rain, that would be more of a problem than what it was last year when we only got 2 inches of rain. So you have wasted water from runoff and evaporation, drainage. You'd have nutrient loss from leaching out of your nutrients to the soil or through runoff. And then you add unnecessary cost of pumping that water that you don't need and it's not beneficial. And then there's also the public perception, which isn't as large of an issue yet in Saskatchewan, but if you look over to our neighbors in Alberta, irrigators there are competing with major cities for water, so they want to make sure that you don't have the appearance of wasting water. So the things you need to know to schedule irrigation include your soil moisture and texture, your climatic information during the growing season, the crop water use, which is a combination of evaporation and transpiration, which we call collectively as evapotranspiration. And yeah, all this information is essential to know, and it's fairly easy to obtain. It can be obtained very cheaply and with low time commitments. And there's also new technology that irrigators in Saskatchewan are using that use remote sensing, that you can bring up your soil moisture grid to your smartphone, and you can make a recommendation on that. And we do have advertisements at the back there for a workshop we're doing next Wednesday, which will be going into more of this advanced technology on scheduling irrigation and talk about that in more detail. But for this talk, I'm going to go into the basic way of obtaining soil moisture, which is the most common way of doing it now. So before we go any further, I'm going to talk about some key terms that are important to know for scheduling irrigation. So this here is what we call the bucket model. Kind of just shows the basics of the soil moisture relationship. So when water goes down to your soil profile, the first bit of it is going to be unavailable to the crop. And this is because, depending on the texture, soil particles bond to the water, and when there's not enough water in the soil, it's bonding so hard to the soil particles that your crop's roots won't actually be able to extract that water. So anything that the plant cannot attain with its roots is considered below the wilting point and not available for the plant to use. So when you schedule irrigation, this is the part you want to worry about, the available water. So this is the water that the plant can readily use. And when we schedule irrigation, we always want to keep the available water percentage above 60%. So over here you see the soil water content. We don't really use this number much. We're more concerned about the available water percent. And when you go find your soil moisture, that's the number you're going to be looking at. So what we usually should say, once your soil gets down to 60 to 65%, that's when you want to start putting on water again. So once you get up to a certain point, or once the soil pores are completely filled, then we say you're at field capacity because the soil can physically no longer hold any more water. And anything beyond that is gravitational water, so that's where you get ponding and waterlogging, and that's also considered unavailable water to your crop, and it's wasted. So yeah, just kind of a quick little model of how water and soil relate. And the important takeaway from this is that you want to keep your soil profile above 60% available moisture. Okay, then the other important thing you want to know is evapotranspiration, or your crop water use. For corn, it is a higher using water user, and I'll show you in the next slide kind of where it uses the most water. But the whole idea of keeping track of this is you want to maintain enough water that the corn is currently using at the time. So it's going to be different when it's a seedling compared to when it's in tasseling or green filling stage. You also want to prevent soil moisture from ever reaching that wilting point that I talked about before. Once you get down to that wilting point, then you're going to see a large yield reduction, and you're going to see noticeable effects in your field. And you also want to know what the available water holding capacity is in your soil. So if your soil is at 60% available water, what does that really mean? It's going to vary from texture to texture, but you want to know how much water is in there and how long that water is going to last you. And you also want to know how fast your crop is using that water, so you can determine roughly how long you can go without irrigating. So this is the crop water use chart that we made for silage corn in the Outlook area. So as I mentioned before, corn can use about 344 millimeters water, or about 13.5 inches in a growing season, and usually we don't get that amount of water or rainfall in Saskatchewan, so irrigation is pretty much essential to meeting the yield potential of corn. During its highest water requirement period, during the dough and silking tasseling stage, when it's filling its grain, it can use 6 to 7 millimeters a day, or it's about a little under a quarter of an inch a day. So that's the part, especially if you're not getting much rain during this stage, you want to be out in the field and you want to be checking, because if your crop if your soil gets before the low wilting point during its reproductive stage, you're definitely going to see some damage. And then you also want to know when it stops using water. So for grain corn, once you get to the dent stage, you're no longer going to get any benefit from applying irrigation. For silage corn, we say 3 weeks prior to dent stage. That's when you want to cut off your irrigation, because that corn crop won't benefit anymore and you're just going to delay maturity. Okay, then the final thing you need to know is soil texture. Soil texture is very important because it tells you how much water it can hold and how fast the water can infiltrate through that soil. So soil texture is just the allocation of different particles in your soil. So percentage of clay, percentage of silt, percentage of sand, and the different types of soil, like say sandy loam or clay loam, are going to have different speeds that water can actually seep through them. So for a sandy loam, water will flow through sandy loam at the rate of 7 millimeters per hour. But if you have a clay loam, that's going to go down to 0.7 inches per hour, and for a clay loam it's 0.25 inches per hour. So it's a huge difference depending on your texture, and this is also going to affect when you're going to want to apply water. Mostly your land does have a pretty sandy component to it, because you want to have your irrigated soils to have good drainage to prevent water logging. This is also going to affect too the amount of water you can apply at a time. So if the water isn't seeping through the soil very fast and a heavier texture, you won't be able to apply as much water because you're going to be applying the grain. So this kind of just puts everything together with the terms that I talked about before, with field capacity, different soil textures down here, and the percent water. So as you can see, a clay can hold a lot more water than the sand, but there's also a lot of water in a clay that isn't available to the crop. And this is because clays have very small particles, and there's a lot more surface area making contact with that water, which creates a much tighter force between the water and the soil. So all this water here won't actually be able to be used by a plant in a clay soil. In the sand, you can see it can't hold much water, or sandy loam can't hold much water, but the water that's there, a lot of it is available. And over here you can see how much each texture of soil can actually hold. So clay can hold 4.5 inches of water, but like I said before, only about 2 inches of that is available to the plant to use. So now going into actually figuring out what moisture you have in your soil, the easiest and the most cost-effective way of doing it is the hand feel method. It's simple, easy, and quick. All you need is a Dutch auger or some kind of a soil probe. A corn's root system can go like 3 feet into the ground, so you're going to want to probe that and get up to that depth. It's more important during the mature part of the crop stage for corn to get down to that depth. Obviously, when corn is in the seedling stage, it's not going to have those deep roots yet, so you can probably get away with just doing 1 foot. But anyway, what you do is you dig a little bit of soil, take that sample in your hand, and then we have a flow chart in the irrigation scheduling manual. We have some copies at the back that kind of guides you through the process to determine how much water is in that soil. So once you get a good guess from that, then you can put that into you can either just do it manually by going through the process that I just went through by seeing how much water is in there, relate to the amount of available water, and then seeing how much your crop is using, and seeing how fast that water is infiltrating through the soil, and then you can get a guess. But if you want to do an even easier way, there's a great model that we use in our office called AIM, which is the Alberta Irrigation Management Model. It's available for free online. Just Google AIM and Alberta and you'll be able to download it. And you can just plug in that number, your field, your soil texture, your crop. It'll give you a good graph, and you can base your scheduling off of that. So this is the kind of graph that AIM can produce for you. And yeah, so you just got to plug in your variables, and then this is one of the graphs it can produce, and this just shows the amount of available water in your crop. So this blue line here represents the 60% mark, which is where you want to keep your crop above. And it also gives you a prediction too, based off of historical climatic data. So it's not going to be exact, because weather obviously always changes in Saskatchewan, but it's a good tool to use to help predict. And if you're interested in learning about AIM, we made a step-by-step guide that kind of simplifies it, also available in the Irrigation Scheduling Guide, and I'll also be going over AIM in detail at our meeting we're holding here for available rate irrigation next week. So yeah, this is the guide I keep on referring to. I'd encourage everybody to pick up a copy if you don't have one. Lots of useful information. It goes through all the key concepts that I just talked about. Probably be better if you read it yourself, because sometimes that's the best way to learn things. And gives you the flow charts for not only for finding out soil moisture, but also for finding soil texture. And that's one thing I was going to say too, is that if you have irrigation and you want to know what your soil texture is, just go back to the certification document that you have. It should say that there. But if you want to do it manually, there's also a flow chart in here to help you figure out where your soil texture is just by using a different hand method. Okay, lastly, Luke went into some variety trials that ICDC does, but ICDC has also done field scale corn trials as well. This is one I wanted to talk about because I think it'd be of interest. It's a trial done near Bursay in 2016, looking at starter phosphorus. So as you can see here in the results, that we had a really good response to starter phosphorus. And this is a grain cornfield, by the way. And we know why we got that good response too. Somebody asked earlier about rotation when in corn and what you should be seeding it into. This was seeded into canola stubble. So not only is volunteer canola a potential issue, there's also other issues that come with it. So first of all, corn is a mycorrhizae crop, which means that it relies on a fungus to take up certain nutrients like phosphorus. If you seed it into canola stubble, canola isn't a mycorrhizae crop. So that year that canola lived in that field, it depleted the levels of that mycorrhizae in the soil. So then you seed a crop that depends on that fungus. It's not going to be there in as high levels as it should. And that's extremely important for a corn crop, especially when it's young and its root system is very small. It needs that fungus to help take up nutrients. Also, phosphorus is a nutrient that can be that is mined out of the soil when you harvest the grain crop. For example, in canola, if you take off a bushel of canola seed, you're taking off a pound of phosphorus. So if you have a nice irrigated field of canola that yields 70, 80 bushels an acre, you're taking off 70, 80 pounds per acre of phosphorus. So not only are you giving your corn a disadvantage of not having that fungi to pick up that phosphorus, you're also potentially planting into land that has a low level of phosphorus, depending on how much phosphorus is there initially. So that's kind of a good takeaway from that demonstration we did. So yeah, just some final thoughts about scheduling. Corn is a high input crop, so you want to make sure you're getting the most out of all the money you're putting into it. And scheduling is a pretty cost-effective way of doing that. It can also help other benefits too, like help establishing your corn crop and making sure that it gets off to a good start, which is very important for corn. And yeah, like I said, scheduling can be done with low cost and commitments. And there's lots of resources here in our office that can help you out. And if anybody ever needs help with scheduling, that's part of my job, is to come out there and show you guys what to do. And I can do it with you guys for a whole season. I'm not the only irrigation agrologist too. Gary Kruger, who talked, and Carrie Drury also do what I do. So you might as well use the resources that we have here and pick up a guide, and it can be a lot of help. So yeah, thanks a lot. And that's my contact information. My office is right across the road if anybody ever wants to talk to me. And take any questions now if there's any. Yeah, thank you.